Hey, Dustin Hurst, Idaho Freedom Foundation Vice President here with a recap of last night's debate between the candidates for Superintendent of Public Instruction. You've got Democrat Terry Gilbert and Republican Debbie Critchfield. Remind you that Debbie Critchfield defeated outgoing Superintendent Sherry Ybarra, who has served two uh, mundane, boring, less than glamorous terms at the head of the education post. Last night's debate covered a lot of topics: school shootings, school safety, test scores. But what I want to focus on today for this video and for those parents who care is the issue of education freedom. Over the last few years, we've seen public schools absolutely fall down on their faces. Remote learning has been a complete disaster, or was a complete disaster during COVID. We've seen parents who have discovered what their kids are learning, a lot of the woke nonsense that happens in schools, the transgender stuff, a lot of the CRT nonsense that schools have not necessarily taught, but embraced the practices of CRT, and more. And schools are just quite frankly failing our students. If you get away from the woke stuff, you look at the test scores, which were discussed again last night in the debate. Um, there are tens of thousands of Idaho kids who cannot read at grade level, cannot do math at grade level, so for us here at the Idaho Freedom Foundation, the answer isn't shoveling more money into government schools. No, it's getting away from the current model and moving to something that empowers families, empowers students, and gives people choice. Now, I want to just focus in on that question for this video. And let's start with Democrat Terry Gilbert. It's very clear where Gilbert stands on the issue of education freedom for parents. So let's go and look, and for families, let's go look at Gilbert's answer, and then we'll kind of recap it, and then we'll go look at Critchfield's answer. Here is Democrat Terry Gilbert on the question, and again, the question is: would you support education freedom in some form or another? Let's look at Gilbert's answer. Here we go.
If you want to kill public schools, let's adopt a voucher program. Let's give money to the voucher program. Let's have those corporate greedy voucher people swallow up the money. Our genius in this country is public education. Public education. So when my opponent says, I don't want to take money from public education for my choice program, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like defund the police. Let's defund schools. I call them voucher vultures. They circle around the public schools. They wait for them to die. They spread messages and rumors about what the schools are doing. Do you know that they're indoctrinating your child? The latest venture was in pornography. They're teaching pornography. Well, after they have split the parents from the public schools, then they say, oh, we have this neat, spiffy idea. We have this voucher program. Yes, I'm very much opposed to it.
And is there any scenario where you could support any form of expansion of school choice?
Well, we have school choice now. We have public charter schools. We have home schools. We have public schools. We have magnet schools. We have lots of choices now. We don't have to ruin our democracy in our country by gravitating to a voucher program. I'm opposed to it.
Okay, so let's review that real quick. Terry Gilbert's position is very, very clear. There's no room to expand education freedom in Idaho. Zero, none. We already have all that we need. That's his position. And by the way, he's trying to gaslight you into believing that what's happening in public schools isn't happening and that you should feel bad for sounding the alarm. Terry, we invite you to go to centerforamericaneducation.org and see the evidence that we have there. There's loads of it. There are several articles on the sexualization of kids, how schools have embraced woke ideology, how they're paying, these equity consultants to bring the practices of CRT into schools. So we focus less on outcomes and merit and more on identity politics, and equity practices. Make sure you get your pronouns, kids. Besides the point. Then he also suggests that we have enough choice, because you can go to a charter school, you can go to a government school, you can go to a private school. Okay, cool. But if you choose not to have those options, you're still going to pay for government schools, and money isn't going to follow your kid. What if I want to homeschool? What if I want to send them to a private school? You're out in the rain and you still have to pay for government schools. That's not choice. And it's a little embarrassing when Idaho, supposedly a conservative red state that empowers parents and families, has a massive majority in the House and Senate, both bodies. But we can't get choice done. But Arizona, which has a one seat majority for the Republicans in each of its two legislative bodies, they got it done. They got it done. We can't do it. But that's another another video for another day. So Gilbert's position is crystal clear. Anybody who tries to improve education is a voucher vulture, whatever the hell that is. I don't know. Here's the thing. If you're a communist, you don't understand that when people compete for resources and compete for customers, the product gets better. I don't know how you don't understand that in this modern marketplace, but somehow Gilbert missed that. I don't, whatever, or he chooses to ignore it. I'm not sure which is worse, but that's where we're at. Now, let's move on to the more confusing of the two answers. I don't know why this is so hard. Parents over the last 2 years have been absolutely enraged by the behavior of public schools, whether it's, again, as I mentioned before, remote learning was a complete disaster, and we're seeing the fallout from that in test results. Schools have embraced CRT practices, and they're focused on equity, and they're asking kids their pronouns and teaching them that there are 433 million different genders. Parents want options, and they want to be able to afford those options. Parents are dealing with lots of things right now that make it very difficult. Everyone says, okay, well, take your kids out of public schools. If you're working two jobs, and dad's at a call center and mom's at a bakery, or dad's slinging wrenches and mom is maybe she's at the call center, it's very difficult to keep up with your property taxes, to keep up with rising rents, to keep up with gas prices, food prices, and pay tuition at a private school, which, by the way, is usually more affordable than what we're paying for government schools to deliver worse results. So the tone of the moment is very clear. And yet, the Republican nominee, who is supposed to be for empowering families and offering that education freedom, gives us this answer. Let's take a look.
Do you support allowing parents to use public dollars for scholarships for private or religious education?
You're right. This is a question that requires more to it. I support public schools. I want to say that first of all, because that's a critical part and something that you and I are going to diverge a little bit on. That's a constitutional mandate. How we support that, I have some places that, one, it cannot defund public schools. So my answer is a yes and a no. We don't want to defund public schools, and it shouldn't come at the risk of rural schools. What I would like to see is a thoughtful and balanced approach to how we address this. Currently, we allow parents a lot of decision making within the system itself, whether it's through advanced opportunities, where monies go to private institutions for high school students, or through empowering parents, where they're able to make decisions of how they best see fit to supplement the education of their child. And so this school choice, and I have never said that I supported vouchers, this discussion of how we, I guess, open up school choice in other ways is one of the predominant discussions in education in Idaho today.
So if this is more of a yes than a no, and it sounds like it might be, are you concerned that expanding school choice will create some of the same challenges that we've seen with the charter system, where charter schools are underserving rural students or students of color or low-income students?
Well, I don't know that I've thought about it in terms like that. I think about what are the educational choices that our students have outside of the most urban areas of our state. And that's why I bring up those 2 points. If we're going to talk about public monies going to private institutions in the K-12 arena, it cannot come at the expense of public schools. If we're just talking about slicing up the same pie, that isn't going to work. And it cannot come at the expense of rural students where they have limited choices. And frankly, public schools are a school of choice for many Idahoans. And so if we're going to talk about honoring all choice, it has to be a discussion where we bring people together and we take a look at all of these factors and then come up with something that makes sense. There are other states that are doing this, and there may be parts of that work here in Idaho, but we need an Idaho solution that honors all choices.
I don't know about you, but I actually have no idea what she just said. I I think I might have to go through and put this through a transcription service and go line by line to figure out what Ms. Critchfield just said, because it's not clear. And if it's not clear, that tells you something. Ms. Critchfield is not an advocate for what Corey DeAngelis says, who's become the OG of education freedom: fund students, not systems. One of the first things out of Debbie Critchfield's mouth was, we have to protect the system. No, we don't. A little earlier in the debate, I think the first question by James Dawson was about how, or maybe it was Kevin Richards' second question, it was about how test scores have shown that, okay, Idaho students are better on NAEP scores, which is the nation's report card, but they're still not good, and thousands of kids are not performing at grade level. And yet here we are moments later in the debate saying we need to protect government schools because of X, Y, and Z. It's an interesting point. But if you're looking for change, if you're looking for empowering parents, if you're looking for aggressive, bold action like we're seeing in West Virginia and Arizona, the debate last night was completely devoid of it, and I don't know what to tell you. And it's interesting to me that I'm on Twitter all the time. I don't recommend following me because I'm usually flaming people out, but I was following Luke Mayville, who is the leader of the socialist group Reclaim Idaho. And Luke made an interesting point on Twitter yesterday. He said, vouchers will drain resources from public schools and they will underserve rural areas. Okay, put that side by side. Here it is. So that's what he said. Put that side by side with what Debbie Critchfield just said. We need to protect, keep government schools whole, and then we need to make sure that we have options or choice will underserve our rural students. Zoom out just a little bit. The Republican nominee for superintendent of public instruction just matched rhetoric with the leader of Reclaim Idaho. I don't know what to do with that. I really don't. If you want to see what real educational leadership looks like, people who are advocating for parents on a daily basis, for real choice, for real options, for real freedom, I invite you to visit centerforamericananeducation.org. There we have a trove of research. We have stories about families who are already doing it, who are guiding the way on choice, who show you that it can be done, that sacrifices are necessary, but they're worth it. And we have lots of options there. We can show you all your resources. We show policy ideas that can help lawmakers, because we believe that choice is where we need to be. We believe that empowering families and making education providers compete will ultimately serve students in a way that government schools cannot and will not. For the Idaho Freedom Foundation, I'm Dustin Hurst. Thanks.